Welcome back to Personal Finance. This is Insurance 101. So glad you could join us. We're going live on YouTube, Facebook, X, LinkedIn. My favorite social media is LinkedIn. So if you haven't already done so, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you are already connected with me on LinkedIn, you may see that we're going live right now. It is 14 October, year of our Lord 2025. Can't believe it's already October of 25, but it is. Today's Tuesday, and this is week number 8 in personal finances. As you may know, this is my last semester to teach before I take a 1-year sabbatical. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm getting like spring fever, even though it's almost winter. And I'm really excited about that. The temperatures have cooled down. But anyway, we are going to get started here in a few minutes, and I'm going to do a little bit of a tech test right now to make sure everything's working. Looks like there we go. There's the iPad. And by the way, what I'm showing you on my iPad right here, this is the post from today, October 14th, 0025. That should be 2025. I'll need to fix that. I thought my program would fix that, but apparently it didn't. Anyway, that is today's post. And so you will see, if you look in the comments below, a link to this post that you're seeing on my iPad. So we'll get started again in a minute. This is insurance, and my goal uh, in this lesson, in this lecture, in this week's assignment, my goal for you, if you're a student in my course, my goal for you is that you learn enough about insurance this week so that it kind of sets the table for you to become a good consumer of insurance. Insurance is a big, or will be a big part of your budget. It's one of the largest categories in most people's budget. So my goal, the reason this is in personal finance, is because it is a big part of your annual budget. And so my goal is to help you understand how insurance works sufficiently so that you're not afraid of it, and so that you're able to learn more and more as you move forward and start to purchase insurance. So I'm going to jump into, I think what I'm going to do is jump into, let me see, I'm going to find my buttons first. And this is my playground. Looks like it's working. I think everything's working. By the way, I'm getting a new Mac Mini today. I can't wait to get that and play with it. It's got the M4 chip. It's very inexpensive. I was able to buy it with my U of H discount at Apple, education discount. This Mac is what I've been using, and it's awesome. It's an M1 though. So if you're a Mac person, you can celebrate with me as I get ready to get a new MacBook. Okay, here's kind of an overview of what we're going to do. And by the way, as always, this video will be posted in our playlist for this semester's cohort. And you can find that at uhplaylist.com. You'll find the entire playlist for this semester. So one thing you're going to do this week in your assignment is you're going to get an auto quote. You're going to get an auto insurance quote. If you don't have a car, if you don't, I'm going to talk you through how to get that quote. But if you don't have a car, then you're going to need to maybe work with a roommate or a friend or a family member who does have a car and get an insurance quote. And I'll walk you through the purpose of that part of your assignment. And I'll also give you a very good, helpful suggestion for how to do that. So pay attention. I'm trying to remember uh, what this week's secret class collaboration discussion is going to be. And I think I know what it's going to be. That in just a minute. Okay, so let's just go back to, I'm going to go to this section right here, and I'm going to show. Okay, now let me get rid of this. Hold on. I want to walk through what we're going to cover in today's lecture. So first of all, I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of auto insurance, home insurance. We'll talk a little bit about liability insurance. I will walk you through how to get an auto insurance quote. And finally, you will need to add your insurance that you're going to, you purchased a home, you purchased a car. They were maybe make-believe items, but they're in your financial plan and Right Capital. So this week you're going to add those items to Right Capital, and I'll show you how to do that. It's very easy. Okay, so let me see. What do we have next here? Yeah, we're gonna do a little review. I'll do a little uh, auto. These are what you're gonna add to Right Capital, and you'll see how to do that in this week's assignment. You'll see a post in Money Study Group as well as the post that we're looking at here. Let me just open. Let me see. I'm gonna go to iPad and just scroll down. This is the post. You can find a link in the video, but you'll have this in Money Study Group as well. But this is everything you're going to be basically discussing in your assignment this week. These are the things that you will need to address in your auto insurance quote as well. These are the coverages, and we'll talk about them in just a minute. But I just wanted to show you, I think I have some screenshots. I do believe I have some screenshots. Sorry to make you dizzy. Uh, Sorry about that. Okay, I'm looking for the screenshots. There we go. Um, so that's an auto insurance quote, and you'll see that when you go into your Right Capital plan, you'll see the data card for insurance. Let me just show you real quick how to add that. I'm going to jump into Right Capital. Before I do that, though, I'm going to switch my screen so you can't see me log in, because then you'll see actual people that are in the portal. And I don't want you to see the actual people in the portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Billy's plan, just give you a quick review of how to add your insurance in Right Capital. So I'm going to go to Billy. Let's see. Sorry about that. I could have, maybe should have had that open for you before. Go to Billy's plan. Okay. So now I should have Billy's plan up. Now I'll come back to my iPad. Things are running kind of slowly over here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this. So this is just Billy's plan. Now this is where you would end up when you log in to your plan in Right Capital. But the way you're going to add your insurance is just like everything else. When you're adding something to your plan, typically you're going to go in the upper navigation, you're going to go to Profile, and then you're in the Net Worth section, and that's where you will add account. So if you look at this section right here, sorry about that, add account, you'll see that you can add insurance here. So let me get that. My fingers are fat and I'm having trouble with my fat fingers. So add account, insurance, and you can see if I go down there, there we go. I'm going to try to make that bigger so you can see it, but it's not working because, again, the fat fingers. So I apologize for that. I think hopefully by now you get the message, or you see what you need to do. You're basically going to go add account. I did it again. Add account, insurance, and then down at the bottom of that list, you'll see auto and homeowners. And that's where you will add it. Let me just click on auto. So that brings up the data card, and I gave you some screenshots in your assignment, in your homework rather, in Money Study Group for how to do that. So you'll definitely want to add comp and collision, your premium. You're going to want to add, how much coverage you have. These little I buttons, uh, info buttons, they help you understand what that is. But the point is, you're going to need to complete all of these uh, fields in your data card for auto and for home. So you'll get to do that. And again, I spell that out in your article in Money Study Group, and as well, if you just look at uh, the post that is linked in this video, you'll see pictures of what is needed here. So I just wanted to show you quickly how to get to that part of your assignment. Uh, and again, in the post, you see there's the information. So that's basically built a data card that's been completed. Um, and these are so this screenshot you're looking at right now, FYI, is showing what you would get a deduction for if you failed to include this. So what we have here is the deductible is showing 0. Uh, you don't know maybe you don't know what a deductible is right now, but you're going to learn about a deductible. It's one of the terms that you will read about in your assignment this week. So I'm just going to jump in and start kind of teaching because well, here's the deal with insurance. I told you what my goal is for you. My goal for you is, hold on, I don't want to make you dizzy by seeing me scroll and scroll and scroll. But my goal for you in this assignment this week, in your lesson this week in insurance, my goal for you is to help you become a good consumer of insurance, because you're going to spend a lot of money on insurance. The bad news is, the good news is, the bad news is, the good news is. You want the good news or the bad news first? I don't know if it's good news, but the truth is, and I'm not really proud of this, but if I'm an expert in anything, it's insurance. I was a State Farm agent for many years. I have a lot of letters after my name. Most of those letters relate to insurance certifications like CPCU, which is Chartered Property and Casualty Underwriter, CHFC, Chartered Financial Consultant, CLU, Chartered Liability Underwriter. I think that's what that is, CLU. Anyway, those are just professional designations that come from taking tests and learning about insurance. And so when I was an employee at State Farm, I was actually a claims adjuster for many years before I became a State Farm agent. And so one of the ways that I added value as a State Farm agent here well, down the street in Clear Lake, Texas, I was in zip code 77062. It was right on the corner of Pine Lock and El Camino Real. And that zip code that my office was in was at the time one of the most wealthy zip codes in the country. I think it still is. It's where the Bay Oaks Country Club is, and it's very affluent section of Clear Lake. And so, for me to be competitive as a State Farm agent, the way that I was competitive is I had a tremendous amount of experience in homeowners insurance claims. Uh, and so, sorry about that. I just got a text message on my screen. So, um, I'm sorry, I'm distracted by the text message I just got from one of my clients. But when I was a State Farm agent in Clear Lake, one of the ways that I was competitive and one of the ways that we added value is because of my experience in the claims department. Because I knew a lot about how the claims were handled in the claims department. And because of that knowledge and that experience, I could help my clients basically maximize the value that they got out of their insurance. And because I was in this particular zip code, the biggest asset, the biggest investment most people have is their home. And that's where my experience in claims was homeowners insurance. I was not an auto claims adjuster. I was a fire claims adjuster. And so I had a ton of experience knowing everything there was to know about homeowners insurance. I really was, I knew a lot. And so that's how I added value. And all that to say, the good news for you is if you have a question and you want to ask me about insurance, I very likely have an answer for you. But the bad news is this week, as we focus on insurance, we are not going to have time to cover any in any depth so many things related to insurance. So what am I going to do? What's my goal? I'm going to try to help you become a better consumer of insurance, just to help you understand a few basic things. And to do that, I want to jump into a couple of things that I think I would want to know if I were you. I'm going to share a couple of stories about insurance that will help you understand how it works. There's a lot of terms like what is a deductible? What is liability limit? Uh, and so those I'm going to let you learn and read about. If you don't know what a deductible is, a deductible is basically something you choose on your policy that it helps determine the cost of the policy. Premium, that's what you pay for an insurance policy. The premium on your policy for a homeowner's policy or an auto policy, the premium would go down if you select a deductible that's higher. Imagine if you have a large deductible, that means when you have a claim, the deductible is the amount of insurance that you're keeping, uh, the amount of risk, I should say, that you're keeping that you're responsible for. And the whole idea of insurance is to transfer risk to the insurance company. That's why you buy insurance. But when you have a deductible, that portion of your risk you're keeping, you're not transferring that. So the more risk you retain, in terms of your deductible, the lower the premium. So you get a discount if you have a large deductible. And that's one of the reasons I want you to do an insurance quote this week, because I want you to see the difference between the cost, the premium of your insurance, both for auto and for home, although you're not going to have to you don't have to get a quote on your home insurance. Although I would if I were you. I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. But uh, you, if you have a higher deductible, you pay a lower premium. The problem is if you have a really big deductible so that you can save money on your insurance, when you have a claim, not if, but when you have a claim, you're going to have to come out of pocket with the deductible. So that's the trick for you as a consumer, is to figure out where's the best bang for your buck. And that was one of the things I helped people do as a State Farm agent, was I helped them identify the best place, the best value in the package. So when you do your quote this week, in an auto quote, an auto insurance quote, you're going to see all of the coverages and you're going to have to make a selection. Do you want more coverage here or less coverage here? And how much will that save you in your premium? And how much will that cost you in your premium? So that's the whole point, the whole reason that you're going to get an insurance quote for auto insurance. It will help you learn the coverages. It will help you become a better consumer. The gentleman John Lopez, if you're watching, I'm talking about you. Uh, the person who got me the opportunity to teach at the University of Houston, a good friend of mine, John Lopez, he he taught me something about insurance. John would get every year, he would take his insurance and get quotes trying to save money. And I was his agent for about 5 minutes. State Farm, I'll tell you, State Farm is not the cheapest. It never, well, I wouldn't say it never has been. State Farm has been the cheapest insurance around at times. But during my time as a State Farm agent, at least in the Houston area, we had a consistent season of raising rates higher and higher, especially for homeowners insurance. And so if you're a homeowner, you generally want to have your home and your cars insured at the same place uh, because you get extra discounts. And so my friend John, he became a client when I was a State Farm agent in Clear Lake. And during that time, State Farm was raising rates. Now, that's not necessarily bad if you're a State Farm agent. You get paid a commission. But I hated it because all of my clients were shopping around like John. Not all of them were. Many of them never shopped around. And that's what I learned from John, my friend John Lopez, Professor Lopez. He would shop every year and he would look for the best price, and he would, you know, that was one of the things he did to be uh, a better consumer of insurance. Now, I obviously lost his business pretty quickly because it wasn't difficult, didn't take long to find another company that was less expensive than State Farm. So you get to decide kind of the balance. Now, I'm no longer a State Farm agent. I retired from State Farm. Now I'm an independent fiduciary advisor, and I still give advice on insurance to my clients. But I would encourage you, as a new consumer of insurance, to at least consider the value of having an agent. You can get insurance like I have in my insurance today through Progressive because it's a good price. They have great technology, and I just, I don't need an agent because I can be my own agent, and maybe you can too. If you decide you're going to learn enough about insurance to be your own agent. But on the other hand, if you have a good agent and a team that's willing to give you good advice and help you put together the most cost-effective insurance package, you have to think about what is that worth, because you're typically going to pay more for insurance that comes with an agent, and that's the way State Farm was. And I already told you how I tried to add value for my clients in Clear Lake with you know my experience as a claims adjuster. So anyway, that's a little bit of background about insurance in general, and the cost of insurance and shopping for insurance. So now let's just jump into, let's see here. I'm going to go here and I'm going to show you. Give me just a second. I'm pushing all my buttons. There we go. So auto insurance. We're going to talk about auto insurance for a minute. Again, you're going to get a quote for car insurance, and you're going to see that there is a lot of insurance, a lot of coverages rather, in your auto insurance. And I think what I want to do is just start off by talking about first party coverages and third party coverages, or section 1 and section 2. Every property and casualty insurance policy, and auto insurance is a property and casualty insurance product, just like homeowners insurance is. And every one of those products, whether it's an auto insurance policy, a homeowners policy, a rental dwelling policy, a business policy, all of those property and casualty insurance products have a section 1 and a section 2 in the policy. Section 1 covers you. That's the part of the policy that talks about the coverages that protect you. Section 2 is what's called the liability section, third party. It deals with the coverages that protect you against uh, against the risk that comes from being liable or negligent. So you're going to want to just kind of plant that in your mind and understand there's two different sides to a property and casualty insurance policy. And those two different sides deal with what's covered for your property and what's covered for your liability. And so when we talk about auto insurance, that's true too. And here's the important distinction with one of the important distinctions about auto insurance. Auto insurance comes with um, it comes with several coverages that in section 1, the first party coverages. So I want to just mention a couple of coverages. First of all, let me see if I can find uh, there we go. Liability. I'm just going to talk about liability insurance for a minute. Liability insurance is what protects you in the event that you cause an accident that's your fault. So what I'm going to talk about for a minute is let me see what we have here. That's the wrong one. I'll just leave it there. So liability insurance again is, and this is true whether we're talking about auto insurance or home insurance. It is something that you do that makes you liable or negligent for the damage that's caused to someone else's property or someone else's person. So I'll tell you the story about uh, an accident. And let's pretend that you are driving your car and your phone happens to, just like a minute ago I got a text message. I'm gonna I'm just gonna say, sorry, comma, I'm teaching right now. I'll get back to you soon, period. Let's see. So there we go. That takes care of that client who had a question about buying some specific stocks. So I'm sorry again. But let's just say that happens to you. You're driving, you get that text message that is burning a hole through your brain because you don't want to disregard that person. And so you pick up your phone and you're driving and you text and you cause an accident. Happens every day. I drive a Goldwing motorcycle through Houston and I'm always looking around to protect myself and I always see people who are uh, on their phone texting while they're driving. And so let's say that happens to you and you cause an accident. And let's just assume that the accident you cause is in a school zone and there's a bus involved and there are 10 kids on the school bus. And let's just say that you have on your car, you have liability insurance, but you bought the minimum protection you can get. And in Texas, I think that is still a good question for the comment. What is the minimum liability you have to have in Texas? Okay, in fact, let's make that our secret class collaboration uh, question. What is the minimum liability you have to have in Texas? It is now 10:29 a.m. 10:29 a.m. I'm going to say it again. This is the secret class collaboration question. Let me see if I can even find the secret class collaboration. Yeah, here we go. Boom, boom. This week's secret class collaboration is what is the minimum that you're required to have as far as liability on your auto insurance? What is the minimum in Texas in 2025? So that's the secret class collaboration question. So there you have it. Now I'm going to go back to where were we? I'm going to go back to this, go back to that. There we go. Okay. So Sorry, I'm pushing buttons and trying to find my way. What is the minimum? That's the secret class collaboration. But let's say you have the minimum, and let's just say it's $15,000 for liability. You're going to find out when you do your quote that liability comes with three numbers. Let's say 15, 25, and 50. Okay, those are three numbers: 15, 25, and 50. And what those three numbers would be: 15, 25, and 50. 15 would be the amount of liability that you have protection for in the event of one person's injury. So if you had one of those kids on the school bus go to the hospital and they had $20,000 worth of doctor bills, hospital bills, surgery, your insurance policy, because you have 15, 25, and 50, your policy would pay how much for that one student who went to the hospital with $20,000 of medical bills? Your policy would pay up to the limit, which is $15,000. Who was going to pay the additional $5,000 for that one student? You will. So again, you have 15, 25, 50. This is your insurance coverage. Those three numbers are going to be on your policy when you do the insurance quote. So let's say, again, there are 10 students in that school bus that go to the hospital. We already know one of them had $20,000 worth of medical bills. But let's just say the other nine had $10,000 each of medical bills. They all had injuries and they all had to have some kind of medical procedure. Let's just say 10,000 each. That's nine students at $10,000 each. That totals $90,000. How much coverage do you have? You have 15, 25, 50. The 50,000 is for property damage, okay? The first number is for one person, bodily injury for one person, $15,000. The second number, 15, 25, I think that's what we said, right? 15, 25, 50. 15,000 is for one person. So the student who had over 15,000, the max, the limit is 15,000. So you're already over $5,000 for that one student. But then we go to 15, 25. So you have $25,000. It's called the aggregate. That means all of the students who have injuries, the total amount of coverage that you have is $25,000. And we know that nine students had $10,000 in injuries, medical bills. And so those students, that total is $90,000. So the first student was 20, the rest of the students is 90. That's $110,000 total. And your policy covers you for 25. So the policy will pay the limit and then you will pay the rest. And that's why it's important for you to know what coverage you have, especially if you're a person who likes to text and drive. So that's just a quick story about how that works. So that's liability insurance. So let's talk about homeowners insurance for a minute. Uh, while I talk about homeowners insurance, I'm going to, uh, let's see, yeah, homeowners insurance. You see on the screen, we have flooding. We haven't talked about deductibles yet. So we did talk about deductibles. I'm sorry. We haven't talked about exclusions. So when we talk about property and casualty insurance, there are always exclusions. Every policy has exclusions. And on the homeowner's policy, the number one exclusion, which you may not like, it may not just totally make sense to you, that hurricane and windstorms and hail and flooding, those could be excluded depending on where you live. I live in Galveston. I'm sitting here in my studio in Friendswood, Texas. And because of where I live, if I had a homeowner's insurance policy, which I don't, I'm self-insured, which isn't fun. I wish I had insurance. I'd like to have insurance, but frankly, I'm not going to spend the amount of money that it costs to insure my home when I'm going to have a really high deductible. And I just know that statistically, well, I'm taking a risk, right? I'm not transferring the risk of this home getting destroyed in a windstorm, in a hurricane. I'm not transferring that to the insurance company, because if I did that here in Galveston County, I would have to have a homeowner's insurance policy and a wind insurance policy. But what I do have is a flood insurance policy because it's subsidized by the federal government. But what I want you to know is that flood is one of those things that's excluded on your homeowner's insurance. And so if you don't have flood insurance and we have a flood, like remember Hurricane Harvey, how it flooded everything? That was not covered on your homeowner's insurance. It was covered under your flood insurance. And if you didn't have flood insurance, you had no coverage. So I'm telling you, I have flood insurance, but I don't have homeowners insurance. I don't have windstorm insurance. And so that's just something that you have to decide. And if you're in a situation where you can afford to uh, have, if you can afford to cover yourself, that's just a risk that you take. So there you go. Okay, let's go back to car insurance and talk a little bit about car insurance. I'm going to come back here, see if I can get there. So that's a home burning, and we're talking about car insurance. So I don't know what that's about. Uh, yeah, I guess my screen show isn't perfect. But let's talk about auto insurance for a minute. So you see hail, that's hail right there. Hail is an important thing to talk about when you're talking about car insurance. So, first thing I want you to know about car insurance is that you have exclusions, and every policy has exclusions. So, let's talk quickly about two important coverages in your auto insurance policy, and you'll be getting quotes. So, you'll have these two coverages on your quote, and you'll see them in Write Capital as well. The first coverage is collision. The second coverage is called comprehensive, and I want to talk about that for a few minutes because I think if you can understand the difference between collision coverage and comprehensive coverage in an auto insurance policy, it will help you understand some other things relative to basic insurance concepts. And so, first thing you get to understand is that there are things called exclusions. So, uh, two coverages. Remember, the policy has a list of exclusions, and you have two coverages here. And one coverage is called collision, and that's pretty straightforward. If you have collision coverage and you collide into something, like again, that accident before where you were texting and the school bus got involved, uh, in that case, your car would be covered under your collision coverage, under the first party coverages, and everything else would be covered under the liability section of your policy. And by the way, we didn't really mention those three numbers on your liability insurance: 25, or we said 15, 25, and 50. The $50,000 on that liability coverage in those three numbers is property. So that covers the school bus. And let's just say that the school bus ran into a telephone pole, and the telephone pole fell onto a McDonald's and broke the sign and broke the window in the front, and there was a Tesla under the telephone pole. You see where I'm going with this? You had $50,000 of property damage, and the school bus alone, because it was an electric school bus, it was $216,000 for the bus. That's how liability works. So just remember those three numbers. You will see those on your insurance quote. Now back to the first party coverages: collision and comprehensive. Collision is straightforward, right? When you get into a situation where you have uh, a collision, your car is covered. Your car is covered by your collision coverage, but the other person's vehicle and the other person's injuries would be covered under the liability section. So, what do you think the difference is between comprehensive and collision? Think about those two coverages: comprehensive and collision. Collision, we know, is when you run into something, but what about comprehensive? And why do we have homeowners insurance on the screen right now? Editor, please fix that. Okay, I'm the editor. I guess I don't know how to fix that right now. So please bear with me. Collision and comprehensive. Comprehensive, what does the word comprehensive mean? This is my favorite coverage in any insurance policy because it has the most, it provides the most value. So just think about the word comprehensive. Look it up, ask Siri. I'm not going to say her name, but Google it. What is comprehensive? What does the word mean? Because that's what the coverage is comprehensive. It covers everything. And that's one of the important distinctions I want to make about uh, insurance. So, and this is true in, this is true in auto insurance as well as home insurance. So why am I, okay. Sorry, I'm playing now. In auto insurance and in home insurance, there's an idea called all risk of physical loss. Imagine that. Comprehensive covers everything. So if we're talking about an auto insurance policy with comprehensive coverage, it covers everything. But what did I tell you about exclusions? Every policy has exclusions. And here's a bonus question. If you know the answer to this, leave it in the comments. What do you think is the number one exclusion under the comprehensive coverage on your auto insurance policy? I'm going to wait and hope, pause the video, leave a comment, and tell me what is the number one exclusion in an auto insurance policy under the coverage of comprehensive, which covers everything except what's excluded. What do you think the number one exclusion is? The number one exclusion under comprehensive coverage is collision. Yeah, you can't buy comprehensive coverage and have them throw in collision as part of that coverage. It's excluded. That's how insurance works. But comprehensive coverage covers everything except what's excluded. There are a couple other exclusions, like, for example, inherent vice. Basically, the fact that your car is going to deteriorate over time, and anything, by the way, that's not sudden and accidental is generally just not covered in any insurance policy, any property and casualty insurance policy, or liability for that matter. It has to be sudden and accidental. Okay, so if it's rust, rot, mold, those things are typically not covered. Now, mold is a special animal, and we don't have time to go into that. But here's the thing about comprehensive. Here's why I want you to have comprehensive insurance on your car, because it covers everything. It's comprehensive, except what's excluded. So comprehensive covers flood, covers hail, hurricane, all that stuff that you need special coverages for in a homeowner's policy. If you live in a county like I do, where wind is excluded on your homeowner's policy, it's not true on your auto policy. Comprehensive covers all of that. Imagine if you're driving in the rain and it floods and you have to drive through deep water and it ruins your engine. That would be covered under comprehensive. What if somebody steals your car? That's covered under comprehensive. What if somebody vandalizes your car? That's covered under comprehensive. What if we have a huge hailstorm? Baseball size hail destroys just hammers your car. That's covered under comprehensive. And by the way, you can sometimes get a very low deductible on your comprehensive coverage, which I always tried to do, because there are so many things that are covered under comprehensive. When I became a State Farm agent, I was in Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. If you don't know where that is, just look at a map of Western Pennsylvania and you'll see this big green blob right, there in northwestern Pennsylvania. And that's the Allegheny National Forest. If you look at that green, it's a circle, Look at 3 o'clock on that circle, and you'll see a town called Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. Ridgeway doesn't have an E in it. It's Ridgeway, Ridgway, Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. It's the county seat of Elk County. I was a State Farm agent there for 3 years. That's where I became a State Farm agent. And day one, the very first day that I was a State Farm agent, in the morning, early in the morning, we got a phone call, and it was a client who was filing a claim on their car insurance. And they were filing a claim under comprehensive. And the claim that they were filing, they totaled their car driving through the Allegheny National Forest. They hit a bear. Now, I grew up in Michigan. We're in Houston, Texas. Now, you just don't see that many bear. I never saw a bear in the wild in my life until I lived in Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. Very first claim that I took as a State Farm agent, day one, was a client who totaled their vehicle because they hit a bear. What coverage would you think is going to respond to that claim? You would think, you might think that it's collision because they collided with a bear or a deer or a big dog or a cow or a bull, but it's not. It's comprehensive. So they, in fact, had a zero deductible on their comprehensive, and their car was totaled, and we paid for them to get a new car. And they didn't pay any deductible because their comprehensive at the time was a zero deductible. So that's an important coverage to understand and to have. I'm going to tell you another story because I like telling stories. And these are stories that are just so I'm showing you pictures of a homeowner's insurance. That's hail beating up a roof. That I could talk about that for days because hail and homeowners insurance and roofs, that's a whole specialty item. Um, but I'm going to have to hurry up and get through this. But I do want to talk about, let's see. I'm just going to see if I can find, I'm looking for, and we'll stick with this just for fun. I think I'm going to hide this. Yeah, collision coverage. We're going to talk about, do we have comprehensive? I need a new screen show. But did I tell you that this is there we go, comprehensive coverage. That's what I want to tell you a story about. Did I tell you this is my last semester to teach? I know I did. And so probably not going to put a new screen show together for this semester, but we'll talk about comprehensive again because I want to tell you a story. I like telling stories. This story, I was working Hurricane Andrew. I was in Homestead, Florida. I was actually living in Key Largo at the time, doing catastrophe duty as a claims adjuster for homeowners insurance after one of the biggest storms in the history of the world at that time, which was Hurricane Andrew. So while I'm there working, my wife is here with our two sons and our daughter. Daughter was just a baby, but our two sons, Brandon and JR, they were in Little League. And so my wife had taken the kids to a ball game at the Little League park just down the street in Friendswood. But she stopped at the donut shop in our minivan, our Dodge Caravan. And when she got done at the donut shop eating donuts, they all jumped in the van to go to the ball game, their ball game. And the van would not start. So this nice man offered to give her a jump, jump her battery. And this nice old man was in a welding truck. Now, I don't know if you know anything about welding trucks, but your automobile typically is a 12-volt system, and this welding truck was 220 volts. And he took his 220-volt leads and put them on the batteries, the battery leads, the 12-volt automotive battery in my wife's Caravan and our Caravan. And when he did that, things started to smoke, and it was not good. Things started to smoke, and it burnt up many of the components, including the wiring harness in that vehicle. And my wife called me because the nice man who burnt up her vehicle quickly got in his vehicle and drove away. So my wife called me, and I'm in Florida working Hurricane Andrew. And I'm like, babe, don't worry about it. We're all good because we have rental coverage and you get to go rent a vehicle. And she's like, yeah, but what about fixing our vehicle? It's destroyed. And I'm like, don't worry about that either, because we have comprehensive coverage. They're going to fix everything. And sure enough, State Farm fixed everything on the vehicle. We got a new stereo system, a new wiring harness. The list went on and on. It was a big claim. But my point is, if you wouldn't have known that comprehensive coverage covers everything except what's excluded, you would not file a claim. You'd probably just go and take it to the shop, pay $3,000 to get your vehicle fixed. But if you know that comprehensive coverage covers everything except what's excluded, then all you have to do is look at the exclusions and go, okay, I don't see an exclusion for a welding truck melting my wiring harness. That's not listed as an exclusion. Therefore, it's covered. Now, the same thing is true about your homeowner's insurance, at least in Texas. If you have the special form, which most people do as a State Farm agent, and that's what I sold, you always want to have the most comprehensive coverage available. It costs a little more, but it's worth it because what you get in your homeowner's policy on Section 1, not Section 2, not liability, Section 1, you get full coverage, or it's called all risk of physical loss. Therefore, it's covered unless it's excluded. Okay, so that's an important thing to know. All right, so one more quick story about comprehensive. I love comprehensive, it's my favorite coverage. We were moving to Houston from Austin, and our friend Vinny Vance, he was driving his brand new Suburban, and he was helping me move my family from Austin to Houston so that I could go to work for State Farm as a claims adjuster. I was in school at the time, State Farm Adjuster School, learning how to be an adjuster. And I was learning all about these different coverages, okay? Not just homeowners, which is what I was going to be, was a homeowners claims adjuster, but I was learning about the principles of insurance. And so I was learning about things like comprehensive insurance and how it covers everything unless it's excluded. So my buddy Vinny is driving down the road and we stopped and we get a big gulp at Circle K, I guess, one of those big drinks. And he puts it in his console. We get back on the road and we're doing 70 miles an hour through Houston. And Big Vinny, he reaches down to grab his big gulp. And when he does, he bumps his shifter from drive into reverse. Have you any idea what happens inside of a transmission? And remember, I was a master mechanic before I became a State Farm agent. Before I became a State Farm adjuster, I was a master mechanic. So what happened was he reaches down to get the big gulp, bumps his shifter into reverse while he's doing 70 miles an hour, and naturally his vehicle stopped working. Inside of his transmission, things got really crazy. They started to smoke and it just shelled his transmission. So a couple weeks later, Big Vinny calls me up. He says, "Hey Jim, I got the quote from the dealer. It's going to be $2,500 to replace the insurance. What would you do? Would you get another quote?" I'm like, "Well, Vance, what I would do is call State Farm and file a claim, and I'd let the dealer replace the insurance because they're going to, it's a brand new vehicle. I know it's more expensive at the dealer, but the insurance is going to pay for it." He's like, "What? Why would you think they would pay for that? That's crazy." Now, remember, my friend Vinny, he's the guy that got me the job at State Farm. His position at State Farm was a claim superintendent. Now, he worked for homeowners insurance, not autos, so he wasn't an auto adjuster expert, but he was an expert in liability on the homeowner side. And he got me the job at State Farm. So he's not asking me questions about insurance. He's asking me questions about getting his transmission fixed, but I'm giving him advice about insurance because why not? Why would you pay $2,500 when your homeowner's insurance, or your auto insurance rather, your comprehensive coverage would respond to that claim and pay for it? And he only had a $50 deductible on his comprehensive, and he thought I was crazy. He's like, "That's not gonna be covered, Jim. You're crazy." I said, "Just do me a favor, bro. Call him, file the claim." And I told him, I pointed out, comprehensive, what does the word mean? It means, I said, unless it's excluded, it's covered. And by the way, I read the exclusions, Big Vinny, and it doesn't say anything about a big gulp shifting into reverse while you're doing 70 miles an hour down the road in Houston. It doesn't exclude that, bro. It's covered. So sure enough, he calls State Farm, files a claim, and they paid for his transmission. And you know what? He never even bought me lunch, dinner. He just laughed. So if you're listening, Big Vinny, you could pay back the favor somehow. Maybe, I don't know, maybe dinner. Anyway, that's one of my favorite stories. I've got several other stories. One of the stories I want to tell before I wrap up is about homeowners insurance. See if I can find it. Well, you know what? I can't, because I need to cover getting your auto insurance quote. I told you I'd give you some information about getting your auto insurance quote, and I want to make sure I do that. So, you know how to add it to your plan, your insurance. I showed you how to do that. But here's a kind of a secret sauce about getting a quote on your insurance. And this is true whether you're driving and you're insured under the policy or not. The best way to get an insurance quote is to contact your current carrier. So you're saying, well, if I don't have insurance, I don't have a current carrier. That's true. But if your roommate has insurance, you can get them a quote by calling their carrier or a friend or family member. So all you're going to do is you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to look at your insurance card, you're going to get your agent's phone number, and you're going to call them and say, I want to get a quote for insurance. Now, you could say, I want to get a quote for this. Let's say that your dream car was that Tesla that you put into your financial plan. You could get an actual insurance quote for that car, and I would encourage you to do that. Or you could say, you know what, I actually am driving a 2022 Camry, and I want to see what it would save me if I raised the deductible or if I increased my liability. All I'm saying is the easiest, fastest way for you to get an insurance quote, if you're already insured, is just call your agent and ask them to give you a quote. And that's your opportunity to look at your coverages and say, what if I reconfigured this policy, knowing what I know about insurance, after you do a little homework and you do a little study and you figure out that you get a savings if you increase your deductibles and you pay more if you increase your coverages. But what if you did a little of both? You raised your deductible and you raised your coverages. You'd have better protection, and you'd get to maybe spend the same amount of money because you raised your deductible, which lowered your premium. But at the same time, you're increasing some coverages like liability. And again, you have to tell the secret class collaboration for this week is, what is the minimum liability required in the state of Texas in 2025? So you may have the minimum. And if you do, I would encourage you to get a quote for the next level up, or maybe 2 levels up. And you'll see when you get the quote that you can increase your liability coverage. There's like certain steps, levels that you can go up. So check that out. And again, here's what I would encourage you to avoid, every one of you. When you go get your quote, don't just Google insurance quote and jump on and go to a website where they give you insurance quotes. Because what will happen is, as soon as you give them your email address and your name and maybe some other information, they're going to let hundreds of insurance agents give you a quote, and you're going to get emails from all these different insurance companies and agents. And I would encourage you not to do that. It's just not worth it. But what you can do, what's easy to do, and what I would encourage you to do, is go directly to your insurance provider and get a quote there. And if you don't have insurance, find someone who does and use their vehicle and let them help you get a quote for their vehicle. Just save it as a PDF and pop it into your, Canvas, and that's how you're going to do that. Okay, it is 10:59. This happens every semester. When I teach about insurance, we run out of time. I wish I could. Well, I don't really wish I could. Neither do you, right? Because who wants to talk about insurance for more than an hour? Most people don't. I do think insurance is fascinating, and I could tell stories after story. I could tell you 100 stories about insurance that I think are interesting, and they might help you learn how different coverages work, especially stories that were claims that I handled over the years that help explain how different coverages work, how different exclusions work, how liability works. I think they're fascinating stories, but yeah, nobody's standing in line to hear me tell stories. And since it is now 11 a.m. and we're basically pretty much out of time, I'm going to just suggest that if you have a question and you want to know something about insurance, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to send me a message on LinkedIn, if you're a student in my course, you've got all my contact information, and I would love to answer your questions about insurance. So that is going to do it for today. I am going to hit the end broadcast.